All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to What the Fix, Episode 2. My name's Paul Roberts.
I'm Jack Monahan.
And we're here with our very special guest, Kyle Wiens of iFixit. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, excited to be here.
We're really excited to have you. So this is, What the Fix is a podcast. We're all about right to repair and the fight to repair, as well as the bigger issues that right to repair touches on: circular economy, sustainability, consumer rights. So we are really thrilled to have Kyle with us because Kyle, I don't know if I could say you single-handedly started the right to repair movement, but you were certainly a important figure in this global movement.
We have been tilting at this windmill, this idea that you can fix your own things for a long while. Ever since Indeed. I was trying to fix an iBook and couldn't because the service manual had been taken offline by evil lawyers. We've been on this crusade to make sure that you can fix all your things.
As a college student, no less, out of your dorm room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to do what we usually do in What the Fix, which is run down the right to repair news of the week. And I think we all have a story that we want to highlight. And Kyle, you're our guest, so I'm going to start with you. What's the right to repair story this week that you want to talk about?
Well, Apple announced in the fall that they were going to be launching a parts program in early 2022. Here we are, it's May, and they have launched the program. And I can confirm it's not vaporware because we ordered the tools. So Apple said that you can now order or actually rent tools from Apple. So we rented the $49 set of tools. They put a $1,200 hold on your credit card because they mail you 2 massive Pelican cases. So we got these 2 huge Pelican cases. They weigh 79 pounds. We were trying to photograph them. We're making a video kind of showing our experience, and we kept having to move the camera farther and farther away from these cases. We don't normally shoot things this big. They're hilarious. Like, do not drop them on your foot.
Yeah.
And they are, the reason that it's 79 pounds is these are the exact tools that the Apple geniuses have behind the doors. So what's interesting, I've been working on Apple repair for my entire career and right to repair for a very long time. And I had never actually touched or seen in person these tools before because they've been secret.
It's like a whole workbench that they're sending you, basically.
Yeah, it's fancy jigs and suction cups and heating elements and battery press for gluing the battery back down.
Yeah.
They're great tools.
Yeah.
So you're slightly impressed?
I'm impressed. I mean, there's a world of kind of manufacturing jigs that you use that are not your kind of typical workshop tools. You're not going to, you might have a screwdriver at home. You're not going to have a full-blown battery press. So if you're a specialized repair shop and you work and you want specialized tools for a particular device, this kind of approach makes sense. And that's what, of course, Apple does at their Apple stores. So then they said, well, if we're going to have to roll out a program to consumers, we'll give them the same tools we have in the Apple store.
It's great, and yet in some ways, I think one of the great things is that, you can go on iFixit, and I've done this myself, and watch a video on how to replace a screen in an iPhone or do another repair, replace a battery. And, you don't need a whole tool case full of tools. Most of these things you can do with very simple tools. So in some ways, sending you the whole workshop is kind of a little overkill, right? I think it presents repair as something maybe more complicated than it actually really is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the goal of right to repair is to democratize repair, right? To make it so everyone can fix their things. Now, the way that the right to repair bill is phrased is it says manufacturers must make available to consumers the same information and tools that their repair shops use. So Apple is complying with the letter of the law, but not really the spirit and intent, which is let's make it easy.
Yeah.
I want it to be so easy to fix things that people are more likely to fix it than to buy a new one. Clearly, Apple doesn't feel the same way.
Right. Okay. Jack, what's your story for the week?
My story is about another big tech company, Microsoft. So they were getting pounded pretty hard by their stakeholders and shareholders about their like just e-waste problem and lack of repairability. Back in like 2019, I know that iFixit gave their, I think it was their Surface Pro 7 a 1 in terms of repairability, and they've kind of like toggled back and forth in terms of like how repairable their like laptops in particular have been. But as part of this kind of big push they're making for environmental and sustainability causes within the company, they just had this report created by some consulting company that focuses specifically on circular economy issues, and they came up with a couple, recommendations and kind of data points. And what they found was essentially that, repairing rather than replacing a device can dramatically reduce carbon emissions associated with the device, as well as, the waste that ends up, after somebody tosses it out. And what was really interesting to me was a lot of it had to do with like travel and supply logistics. And so like how close you're mailing the phone, where is that actually going? And so a lot of times we're thinking about, access to parts and other stuff like that. But, not everybody's going to be a hobbyist. Not everybody's going to want to crack open their iPhone or their, Microsoft device. So it is interesting thinking about how, how we structure these programs and how companies structure the programs to people that are novices, people that aren't actually, wanting to open their phones. Because when I talk to this, when I talk with people that aren't interested in repair, they're like, cracking open their iPhone seems very alien to them and like not of interest at all. So I think like as we think about programs, like Kyle was saying, like thinking about how they shift consumer behavior is really important, and if we're actually able to get people to keep their phones out of the trash and keep their devices for longer.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, Microsoft is having to invent a repair program. So they're in a different position than Apple. Apple's got their Genius bars. They've got a repair network. They also have their authorized service centers. Microsoft is coming from a place where they basically didn't have a repair network at all. And so they're needing to build it all out. Like, yes, they need consumer parts and tools, but they also need local repair options. And that's where this report is coming in, is they're saying, look, Microsoft, you need to build out authorized repair and independent repair. And there, I mean, the numbers are staggering. They said that there's a 92% carbon savings from doing a repair as opposed to buying a new device.
Yeah, in some ways, they're almost better off for having to like start now and like start it from the ground up at this point.
Yeah. I mean, also interesting that report just in, Jack, like you said, sort of thinking about all the different ways that the current system, kind of creates waste, right? And all the different ways that, more easier repairability would reduce that waste. So, yeah. Okay. Good one.
The other thing that this report calls out is like real differences between generations of the same product. So they compare the older Surface Pro to the one that's been redesigned to be easier to repair. And they're saying, like, look, the redesign of the product enables repair to happen locally, where before the non-repairable design meant it basically had to go back to the factory for factory-level rework. And so I think that really is a design for repair success story.
Agreed. So good news from Microsoft in some ways. And, of course, Microsoft has been working with iFixit as well. So there's been a lot of progress from that company in the last year. So my story is for the week is from Ford Motor Company, which this week announced a program, Ford Certified Glass Technician Program, to certify people to replace auto glass in Ford automobiles. Now, you might think that in 2022, it's kind of late in the game to be introducing a certification program for auto glass replacement, given that there's already a really robust industry of independent auto glass replacement, and as well as Ford dealerships. This really speaks to basically what's motivating this is that Ford and other automakers as well are trying to argue that the appearance, the introduction of features like these kind of advanced driver assistance features in cars has changed the game and made really simple repairs like auto glass suddenly a lot more complicated and serious. And their response to that, of course, is to want to kind of slam the gates down on independent repair people doing this and say, no, this is now so complicated that really only the manufacturer or our authorized repair people should do it. And so this certification program is in theory about training people, but actually, as with most, and Kyle will speak to this, as with most repair certification programs, it's really a mechanism for revenue extraction. So any shop that wants to do this has to pay a enrollment fee. Ford was asked about this by Repair Driven News, what those fees were. It didn't disclose them. In addition, they have to agree to use Ford specified equipment to calibrate the glass and do all these other things associated with the repair. So it's not just about the training to do it right, it's also about using their equipment, paying the fee, et cetera, et cetera. Often these certification programs are really about constraining what you can do and how you can do it, rather than just kind of giving you the information you need to go out and do it yourself. So my concern about this is I think we're going to see a lot more of this, that it basically falls into the same right to repair argument we hear all the time, which is, technology and features and complexity change the game. So you used to be able to repair your car in your driveway, but it's all so much more complex now. You can't do that anymore. You have to let basically the manufacturer do it. I don't think there's any data to back that up. I doubt that there's any data to back up that, AutoZone or an independent glass replacement company can't repair this glass perfectly safely and do it in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the operation of the driver assistance software and the sensors and so on. But look forward to automakers making this argument about all kinds of different features, maybe even replacing tires, right? I mean, there's really no end to where this argument could go. So I think we need to pay attention to this.
There's a design for repair aspect of this, too, where if you put the camera behind the glass, then you have to calibrate the camera when you install new glass. If you don't put the camera behind the glass, then it's just a dumb sheet of glass. I remember, so we were at the FTC workshop.
Go figure.
Paul and I were there, and Gary McGraw, our security expert, was on stage, and he was talking. He said, hey, I have an Audi, and the windshield broke, and I called SafeLight to get them to repair the glass. And he didn't know at the time that SafeLight was in the room, and SafeLight wasn't able to repair it because of the Audi camera calibration thing. And I went up to the SafeLight folks afterwards, and I said, what's the deal? And they're like, Audi wants $5,000 or something for this crazy calibration setup, and we just can't have it at every mobile repair technician.
It's all
Is
dating.
it just up to companies? Is it companies that are just deciding this? Like, do they get to make the calls on this? There's no independent regulators when it comes to stuff around repair.
There's no regulation, and this is as we move software into more and more things. There's more precision. Then the manufacturers are just winging it, and they just design a new system every time. It's the calibration tooling for calibrating cameras behind window glass is totally different per manufacturer. Yet you got to come up with standardization and modularity around these things. And I think as we're moving into the new computerized future, we're just not getting that kind of standardization efforts.
Right. And one thing that might help would be for organizations like the Federal Trade Commission to come out and say, listen, we're going to be looking for companies that are basically using, features like this or programs like this to engage in anti-competitive behavior, right? So, setting things up in such a way that, you and only you can do repair X, we're just going to consider that anti-competitive. But right now there isn't a lot of, these are new features and new technologies. There isn't a lot of history or track record with this, so we're kind of learning as we're going. And I think this announcement from Ford, I think again we're going to see more of this. So we need to pay attention. Kyle, welcome. Hey, tell us about, so many questions. give us just the little, for listeners and viewers who don't know, tell us a little bit about iFixit and how the company that you founded came about. Because I think iFixit, the creation of iFixit, in some ways is sort of the genesis, in some ways, of the right to repair movement itself.
Sure. Yeah, I worked in high school. I worked at an Apple Authorized Service Center. So I knew what the repair ecosystem looked like. And I remember I was making... Inside the Death Star, yes. Yeah, so I was making $6.50 an hour, and I saved up all the money I made in high school to buy an iBook. That was my computer for school. And of course, a couple months into school, I dropped it on the power plug. And it was wiggling, and so I'm like, okay, I'll just look at the service manual, I'll open it up. Grandfather gave me a soldering iron when I went to computer science school. He didn't know this software. He didn't know the difference between electrical engineering and computer science. He's like, here's your soldering iron to go to software school. So I start pulling the machine apart and realize it's complicated. There's latches and tabs, and so I looked for the service manual, could not find it anywhere, muddled my way through the repair, kind of barely succeeded. And then kind of went down a little bit of a crusade, like, why isn't the service manual online? And I found the digital traces that the manual had been there, and that there had been DMCA takedown requests sent by Apple's lawyers. So then I'm like, okay, there's a big company who's using legal threats to prevent people from knowing how to fix things. That just struck me as wrong. And knowing at least a little bit about copyright law, I said, well, if I write my own service manual, they can't stop me. And so we took the computer apart again, took apart a few other computers, wrote service manuals, posted them online. They got very popular, and then we figured out we could kind of build a business around that by selling the parts and tools. So we kind of created an ecosystem to replace the ecosystem that Apple had taken offline.
When did it move from that kind of solving a problem, filling a need, and starting a business around it, to this kind of broader idea of like, well, there's a right here that should exist that's missing, right? That this isn't something that's articulated in the law, and yet we need it.
Right.
When did that kind of dawn on you?
So we were working at systematically replacing the ecosystem that Apple had kind of smushed. And we got to the point where we were actually comprehensive. We had service manuals, parts, and tools online for every Apple product, and then we started doing it for other manufacturers. We opened it up as a wiki, and iFixit is this vibrant, growing community. We've got repair manuals that our community has created for over 60,000 different products. But we found that we couldn't keep up. So there's a few factors. One was the community cannot recreate manuals for products as fast as manufacturers can create products. And then also we started running into obstacles with things like a proprietary screwdriver or special software tools that manufacturers would create. And we realized that if we really are going to achieve our mission of enabling everyone to fix everything, we're not going to be able to do that purely by crowdsourcing it. We have to have some input and collaboration from manufacturers. So the first thing I did, way before we started thinking about right to repair laws, was we just started reaching out to manufacturers and saying, hey, do you want to work with us? We've got the system, it works well. What if you did the same thing in silence? And so then I was like, well, what if we could give them a carrot? And so we went to the green standards, these eco stickers, and we started engaging in the standards and saying, hey, can we give manufacturers voluntary points for making service manuals available or for making batteries easier to replace? And I naively thought we'll provide some kind of cool, friendly way to work with them. What we didn't realize is this concept of regulatory capture, where the manufacturers had already infiltrated the green standards process, and we're not going to allow anything innovative in those standards whatsoever. So I wasted 5 years of my life trying to make repairability a factor in green environmental standards in the U.S., and it still isn't there. It's not the case. We completely failed. We fell flat on our face because Apple was there to systematically sabotage it.
What was the moment of clarity for you on that?
I remember there was a point where we said, hey, let's propose a criteria where you get extra points if you use commonly available tools. And Apple said, well, there's no way you could possibly know what common tools are for working on smartphones. And I said, absolutely we can. I've got a repair manual for every smartphone in the world that I wrote. Let me just mine the data. And I gave them a spreadsheet, and I was like, here, you can see it's Torx T5 and then Phillips 000. These are the common screws. And Apple would not accept a list of commonly available tools unless it included the pentalobe screwdriver.
Which only they use.
Right, because there's enough iPhones sold that, of course, this is a commonly available tool. And they just vetoed it entirely unless it included there. And so that's where it's this, okay, this whole thing is a joke. Yeah. That really was what prompted us to say, let's just go to legislation. These companies have no interest in having a voluntary conversation.
When
that
was the
really
first-
is what
when was
has
the first law
started to change.
proposed? Yeah.
Yeah,
When was that?
The first law that was proposed was in South Dakota. I think maybe in 2012, 2014. It's been a while. We had this super badass lawmaker in South Dakota that wanted to get it started, and then it's just spread by wildfire. It's amazing. You would think like we're like coordinating every state that introduces laws. No, we have no idea. Like some legislator in Indiana will see the template and introduce a law. We're like, cool. Sometimes they make changes that we would have never anticipated.
Yeah. What I like about this is that is right. Like there's sort of a template law, and then people can pick up on it. In some ways, business interests have done this very effectively through groups like ALEC, right, of just having kind of broad outline laws that individual legislators and states can introduce, and it's all kind of done for you. It has been really effective. I will say right to repair has not been quite as effective as the business community in getting some of these laws passed, but I do think things are changing, and so we've seen, the past few years that the number of states doing this has just skyrocketed. I think, 20 plus states each year. And what's your sense right now of what the state of play is with right to repair getting passed at the state level as a right?
Well, we have huge momentum now. So we've been introducing bills ever since the South Dakota bill. Every year, more and more states introduce bills, and at first they were dying in committee. Then we started making it through committee, and they die in different areas. So in every state that we have a bill introduced, Apple and John Deere and others come in and they hire the most expensive lobbyists that have not only extensive connections, but they're also making political contributions. And they find some way of killing it. Sometimes it dies silently in a secret committee, like a rules committee or something. But every year, as it gets introduced multiple times, people get more familiar with it, we make a little bit more progress. We were really close in New York last year and then just ran out of time. In Washington State, we made it out of key committees. We were ready for a vote and then ran out of floor time. So we're increasingly close. The state of play right now is over 20 states introduced right to repair in 2022. Many of those have run out of time, but many are still going. Colorado has a wheelchair-focused right to repair bill.
It's very close to passing. Yeah.
Yes, Massachusetts is moving along. New York is looking promising. So we have more momentum and backing. This is because you have the Biden administration supporting it. The Federal Trade Commission actually helped make edits and changes to the draft bill. So it's been really well vetted and thought through. Now we just need one state to cross the finish line.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you see so iFixit has just promoted its partnerships with Google and Samsung are the most recent, and that's making parts and just repair more available for those phones. But kind of where do you see the role of those playing versus legislation? Are the programs that iFixit's running with these companies supplementary to what should be a right to repair in your mind? What does that look like for you?
Well, I think what iFixit is building with these companies, we are building the solution that the laws are asking for. So you're going to see Microsoft or Samsung, when it comes time to say, are we complying? They're saying, yeah, we're selling tools. You can go get them and iFixit. So we're kind of helping. Not hopefully it's more than just compliance. Hopefully they go above and beyond the minimum that the law requires. But that's the system that we're building out. And I can speak to Samsung and Google because we've announced it. The plan is to sell repair parts for their phones alongside tools, so that everything that you need to fix a phone should be included in these programs.
And Kyle, I wonder, there's been, so Apple came out, as you said, with their program a couple, whatever it was, a week ago. Obviously, anything Apple does is just huge news, right? It just gets a lot of attention. There are a lot of Apple fans out there. It's a huge company. Criticisms of kind of how that program is structured, and I think generally there is this sense of, OEMs are doing this, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, it's great. And yet some of these programs fall short of what a true legal right to repair would require of them. What's your sense? I mean, is it if enough companies did this, would that be adequate, or is it still going to be necessary to have that legally guaranteed right to repair?
It's necessary to get a law passed, even if, so let's say, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Samsung, all these companies, let's say they're doing the right thing, they're going above and beyond. We still need a law because you have a lot of other manufacturers, like what's Sony doing, for example, Xiaomi or Huawei, right? Like you have so many other companies that haven't stepped up, all the way over to, no-name products. If you go to, say, Best Buy and you buy an Insignia brand refrigerator or TV, are you ever going to get parts for that? At the lower end of the market, these kind of entry-level devices are the ones that are the most disposable. We have the most biggest waste problem with. And so we need to push on having service networks for all the products in our lives. You would expect the elite, the Apples, the products you pay a premium for, you'd expect there to be a service network for those. But if we really want to move the needle on our e-waste problem, we need to address all the products in the marketplace. And so there needs to be a regulatory floor or some like minimum barrier to entry to the market where we say, look, you cannot dump your refrigerator on our market unless you have a plan for making replacement compressors available.
So what's really amazing to me, and Jack, I'm sure you'd agree, is, Kyle, you're somebody who is really the face in some ways of the right to repair movement. You have been a very vocal advocate, in many cases very critical of manufacturers and their practices. And yet, when Samsung or Microsoft or, Google look to a partner to help them with, to build out their program for user repairs, they came to you and iFixit. So
they kissed the ring.
Not really. I mean, yeah, maybe. But that's really unusual that you have somebody who both is both able to be a critic of and is sort of a Ralph Nader of repair out there, really advocating for this right in a very passionate way, and yet also cultivated, obviously, good relationships with the OEM so that they trust you to actually carry out the program. So how did you pull that off?
Well, I think what's key is, we didn't start out from a position of advocacy. We started out from a position that we just want to help people fix things. And we were kind of forced into advocacy because it was the only way to get that task accomplished. But I'm an engineer. I just want to fix things. And I think that the manufacturers saw our intent all along the way. We've been writing repair manuals for the Samsung phones. We've been writing repair manuals for the Pixel phones. We've been making them available for free. So the logical conclusion is, why not lean into the solutions that we've already created? But yeah, I mean, it is definitely a shift from advocating to collaborating. But as I mentioned, we wanted to collaborate before we went into advocacy. We tried to ask nice, and they just weren't ready culturally. And I think that maybe is part of realizing that we're dealing with these large organizations where Samsung and Google are a system of people and systems, and right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to change that system. You had individuals all along the way that probably wanted to collaborate, and they just couldn't move the machine. Now, by having legislation out there, it provides the folks internally who want to do this with the lever that they need to move the machine.
Can you talk a little bit, as someone that has been pushing for this for longer than most, can you talk a little bit about that evolution, right? Obviously companies, above all else, they need to make money, and profits are king. But, what is the next thing down the line in your mind? When you're talking to people from these companies, is it sustainability? Is it I would think that's it, but you would know better than we would.
These companies are driven by compliance. They are large companies. They need to comply with the laws in order to operate. They are not scofflaws that are saying, how can we, bypass environmental regulation somewhere. They really do want to comply with the law. So when they see new laws down the pike, and potentially if right to repair passes, it can go into effect instantly. The responsible lawyers inside these companies are saying, let's get systems in place to comply with the law. So I would say, first and foremost, they are driven by the desire to comply with current or pending laws. Then, as a backup to that, obviously there's really good reasons to be investing in environmental activities. So we're giving them a lot of good reasons to do this, but as much as I'd like to say, oh yeah, they would have done this out of the goodness of their heart, I've been trying for near 20 years, and this is only happening because the legislation is so close.
And so lobbying is just them hedging their bets.
Or just applying a delaying action.
So, final question, because I know you got to get out of here. You got other stuff you got to do. In addition to right to repair, you've done a lot of really important work around exemptions for the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, Section 1201. This is kind of a lot behind the scenes, quieter type stuff, but you've actually been really important and influential in winning some key DMCA Section 1201 exemptions. Talk about that work, and also how responsible is the DMCA for this kind of larger shift from, I often point out, 40 or 50 years ago, many appliance makers, and electronics makers published really detailed schematics and service manuals with their stuff. Now it's more the exception than the rule. How important or is DMCA to that larger kind of cultural shift on the part of companies? And is it possible we could be in a situation at some point in the near future where we get rid of Section 1201 and somehow, liberate everybody? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if 1201 is responsible for kind of the diminishing availability of service. I think that probably has more to do with just broader liability and trends in society in general. And so I think the broad right to repair movement is going to help that. What 1201 stifles, and by the way, stepping back, Section 1201 is the section of copyright law that says that you cannot break technological locks on products. And if you have figured out how to do that, you definitely cannot sell a tool that enables that. And the problem is that as we have modern products with software in them, repairing a product often involves breaking a lock. And so kind of accidentally, this law that was designed to prevent piracy that was passed in the 90s is preventing repairs and is being used by Philips and all kinds of other manufacturers to stifle repair. What 1201 really is responsible for is stifling the market, that there is not a marketplace of repair tools out there. You can't go to a venture capitalist and say, please give me $10 million to start a new cool auto diagnostic repair app, because the VC is going to say, well, maybe that's going to, you'll have to bypass a lock to do that, and we have liability concerns. And so there's just a whole market for tools that doesn't exist that could. There's a shadow economy of potentially hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of value of people creating nifty tools to enable productivity with John Deere tractors that doesn't exist because. Yeah. So that's the harm that 1201 is causing, and that unfortunately we can't fix that with exemptions. We can't fix that with our 3-year process because the Copyright Office doesn't think they have the right to authorize tools. We have to have a legislative fix, and that's where the Mondare-Jones Sparts bill that's in Congress right now has a chance to do.
Kyle, final question. Folks are interested in learning more about doing repairs and becoming a fixer themselves. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so the Jones Sparts bill is something to reach out to your congressperson and say you support the Freedom to Repair Act. Get engaged. Join iFixit. Learn how to fix something. And maybe take photos next time you fix something we don't have a guide for and contribute it back.
Okay. Go on YouTube, man. YouTube is a great resource as well.
Absolutely.
Hey, Kyle Wiens of iFixit, thank you so much for coming on and being our guest on What the Fix podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll have you back.
Thanks, Paul. This is awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Hold the line one sec. I'm going to press stop record.